Welcome to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler.
Welcome to another episode of the Nevada Patriot Podcast. I, as always, am your host, Matt Sadler. Thank you for joining us online and at KPFF 97.7 FM here in lovely Pahrump. And remember, this episode, along with all the others, can be streamed on demand anytime you want at thenevadapatriot.com. On today's episode, I want to make a case. I want to present a logical argument. The issue is pretty black and white. The issue is this. How big do you want the government to be? And how much power over your life do you want to give government officials? And the follow-up question, it's similar. Can the government even do a remotely good job at making life better, regardless to what degree of power it holds over us? So my argument to the first part of this question is able to be summed up in 7 words. And, that question was, how big do you want government to be? My answer, only big enough to protect my rights. And on the follow-up question, the second part of it, about can they even do a remotely good job, government officials, at making life better? The answer is no. One word, no, they can't. I mean, really, come on. How much power over your life do you want to give government officials? I think our Constitution's pretty self-evident. Our Bill of Rights is self-evident. The Bill of Rights is 10 items, basically. I know each item can be expounded upon, but it's basically 10 areas in which the government is limited in how it is allowed to interfere with the citizenry. And that's important. Now, don't think that these Bill of Rights just came out of nowhere after the Constitution was formed. These thoughts and ideals were prescient, were paramount in the founders' mindset. It was difficult in the first try to get every single item codified into the United States Constitution, but it didn't take too long for those first 10 amendments to come about. And boy, were they needed, especially the first 2. The ones that seem to be under the most attack are the most paramount and salient of our constitutional rights under the Bill of Rights. So I'm going to kind of talk about the show specific to like the Pahrump area, Southern Nevada, the issues that actually affect us on a day-to-day basis. A lot of this can be expounded upon and pressed out, and using deductive reasoning can be applied toward bigger, loftier ideals, toward the nation, toward the world politics. But that's, unfortunately, thinking in the abstract like that, or, on a world basis, doesn't really affect our day-to-day lives as getting things right here in our town, in our county, in our state. That's more important, getting things right here locally. So the first item I want to talk about, it's going to be on the ballot coming up soon. The county clerk is actually calling upon residents to formulate two committees, one in favor of this and one opposed to it. It's the 5-cent per gallon diesel tax being talked about. Now, as a recurring signer of the Taxpayer Protection Pledge that I've signed probably every 2 years since 2016, as a public figure or as a candidate who has run for office in the past, and I plan on continuing to sign the Taxpayer Protection Pledge. This is a big no-go for me. Fundamentally, raising any taxes of any kind is not something I'll do. Even fees that can be sort of disguised are really taxes. I'm against those as well. So, and I know on the campaign trail, different groups kind of would come at me to kind of really press me on the issue. And I'm sorry, that's a firm line that I myself hold on. And I've heard some of the arguments from professing Republicans and professing conservatives, even in our own community, as to why they think this tax is fair. One of the main arguments for this tax that I've heard from people who are conservative or who profess to be conservative say, well, since so many of us are paying a gasoline tax, it's only fair that people who buy diesel tax also pay a higher tax. Now, to me, that's faulty reasoning, and here's why. If you're a married couple, you have children, you had children, and you were married or are married at one time or another, and you had multiple children, and if you've ever punished one of the children unjustly and thought to yourself, wow, I kind of took it out on them, I kind of punished them a little too strictly. As a good parent, what would you do? Would you go apologize to your child, regret doing the punishment? Or would you decide, hey, let's even the score? Little Sally got a spanking and was on restriction for a week. Hey, the other kid who hasn't done anything, just to make things fair, let's go spank that kid. Let's go spank little Tommy. Put him on restriction for a week to even things out. Now, I know that's kind of a weird analogy, but to me it's kind of appropriate because that's really what you're talking about. You're talking about excessive taxes being placed on one person, one group of people like me who have gasoline vehicles, right? I'm never going to walk around and say, I don't think I'm paying enough gasoline tax for my vehicle. We're all spending almost $4 a gallon on gas again. So obviously I think taxes are too high. You compound that with the cost of oil. If anything, we need relief. It doesn't make me feel any better to think, oh, well, my neighbor down the street who has a Dodge Ram diesel truck, now he's going to be paying more. That makes things fair, and I can go to sleep happy and proud of my leadership having voted for a tax increase on diesel gas. It's ridiculous. I think if anything needs to be leveled, it needs to be relief for the gasoline tax to level the playing field, not make someone else's life harder, make them spend more money to make things quote unquote fair. That's a ridiculous argument. So when this initiative comes out on the next general election ballot, I'm urging people, I'm going to be voting no. I don't want this diesel tax. And I get it. The roads need to be fixed. Different things having to do with transportation in and around our valley need to be augmented, fixed up. But the answer is not always a revenue issue. It's oftentimes a spending problem. As more and more people move into our community, more people are paying taxes, more people are spending money on real estate taxes. I myself in my industry have paid, I don't know how many different households worth of taxes to our county and state in the form of filing fees to courts, bond forfeiture fees when I can't make people appear to court. Bam, here's a big fat check to the county and to the state of Nevada for thousands of dollars, courtesy of the bail bonds guy. So, does that mean I want to go around and advocate that, carpenters and painters and auto mechanics and plumbers should pay more taxes because I do? That only makes it fair? No. If anything, I want relief for myself, relief for everyone. Less taxes, less fees. So, if you want my advice, when that ballot initiative comes up, because for some reason it was left off our last general election ballots, vote no this time. I hope you do. Other issue I want to talk about that's kind of affecting our community, really every single community in the United States is facing a similar problem, homelessness. And in my estimation, since the pandemic time, it seems like it's even more paramount. It's more of an issue. The policies from the federal government on down through the Biden administration, the porous borders, competition for certain jobs, because these folks that come in, you got to realize one thing that happens when we have a lot more immigration, and I'm not talking about the criminal immigrants that come, but they are definitely in the mix as well, breaking our laws. I can tell you firsthand, they illegal immigrants are penetrating almost all these communities, especially in the southern part of the United States, and breaking laws, after they're coming in through the porous border. But I'm talking about just even the people that want to do a good job, that want to better their lives, and want to make their family better. They're competing for us, or with us, in our communities. They're competing for jobs, obviously. They're competing for housing. So when we're importing, for lack of a better word, a ton of, whether they're documented or undocumented immigrants, whatever you want to call them, illegal aliens, we're importing other issues that are pushing our support system to the brink. We're pushing healthcare to the brink, healthcare services. Food shortages are out there. I don't know if you notice when you shop, the selections aren't there like they were years ago, 3-4 years ago. You go down the cereal aisle in the grocery store, and how many choices do you have now? How many different choices of meat products do you have in the grocery stores? Like there's a major crunch, and resources are part of the equation. So back to what I think is one of the problems here. There's competition for housing, right? For people that are immigrants. They have to live somewhere when they come here. So you create more and more demand daily. You're talking thousands of people coming over, especially now that Title 42 is expired or sunsetted. And you're talking a ton of people that need to be housed, that need access to services, whether it's emergency services, healthcare services. Folks come in, it's no secret. They come in 8-9 months pregnant sometimes, women to have babies in the United States. Go to a county hospital almost anywhere in the country and get your baby delivered. That's what we do in our country. We're very gracious in the United States. And I think folks take advantage of that. Absolutely. So when it comes to solving our local homeless issue, and I know there's veterans that are having a hard time in our community, and my heart goes out to them. They deserve a place to live, place to stay. And the best intentions of our, county commissioners, our planning commissioners, the nonprofits, the people that administer grants and different things in our community, I know deep down that their heart is oftentimes in the right place. But I'm not sure that government can solve this problem. I'm sure many of the locals here in Pahrump, for instance, have heard about proposals about tiny home communities, different things like that. Now, there's still debate on as to whether there's any merit or any real teeth to these proposals yet. You hear different takes, for instance, on what's been happening at the county commission meetings. The Nevada law did change, and that's a certain thing, that mandated different zonings, different allocating different areas and land use to allow tiny homes to be built on parcels of land. There is no statewide law that mandates the government come in and in conjunction with nonprofit ARPA money and grant money, go ahead and fund the construction of an entire tiny home community. I hope that's a project that does not go forward, because I think the unintended consequences of that is pretty large. If you're going to have hundreds of homes on kind of the main stretch there of Highway 160, you're going to have different logistical issues when it comes to policing, for instance. In the Nye County Sheriff's Office, first responders, emergency services, it's all going to have an impact on how services are able to be provided for that influx of population. Naturally, there are businesses and people in our community are worried about our maintaining our rural lifestyle by having a tiny home community kind of pop up in an area for good reason. I'm probably one of them. And now I understand the argument is that we need affordable housing, right? We have people who are homeless. We have people who are a little bit harder on their luck, and they need a hand up and a place to live. See, the problem though, when you have a community like ours, which is very giving, very generous, on balance, probably some of the nicest, most giving people that I've ever been around are some of the residents and some of the businesses here in our community are very, very good at trying to meet the needs of people. The nonprofits in our community do great work. The service organizations, I don't want to sit here and name them all, but there are some great people. I've worked kind of side by side with some of these groups on different things, and I can tell you that many of these people that head up these groups, they're the real deal. The issue that we have when this a project like this, if it were to be put out there, what you've done now, and fair housing laws and all that kind of stuff applies here. You can't really restrict certain people. What you've done is you've created a magnet where people from, whether it's Las Vegas, Southern California, Northern California, different states, decide to compete, for lack of a better word. That's what they'll be doing, competing for these homes. Same thing anytime there's apartment complexes built with, that are able to take Section 8 housing. We always say, well, don't we want our people in our community to have affordable housing? Well, yes, but they're going to be competing with all these different hordes of people who are going to be coming here trying to do the exact same thing. So how many of our own, quote unquote, our own people here, locals, are we going to be able to help? Or local veterans, are we going to be able to help? Or people that are sometimes some of the folks that are homeless or down on their luck are so because they're facing mental deficits. They have, sometimes mental health is a real problem. But you got to ask yourself: is the government coming in here going to be what solves that issue? Can the government solve that? Now, can the government solve the issues that are created when families are broken? Lots of folks have a hard. It's pretty much obvious if you come from, for instance, a broken family where you don't have a nuclear family household, mother, father, support system. You end up having it a little bit harder growing up yourself. Not only are you living at home with your mom or your dad, a single parent household where they're struggling to work, to pay the bills, all this other stuff. It can be a vicious cycle where you find yourself, when you grow up and have a household, you're experiencing the same difficulties, and life gets difficult. It gets hard. We get that. But is the government the solution to that? Or are we the people, our culture, our value system that's constantly under assault by the media, the sports world, the entertainment world, the technology, social media world? We're at war with these organizations because they don't fight for family values, for taking care of one another. In different cultures around the world, I hate to say it, it's not really here in the United States. When our parents, when our grandparents get older, sometimes we kick them to the curb as a culture. As a society here in the U.S. In different cultures, that's not the case. The older you are, the more revered you are, and the more of a complete privilege it is for the younger generations to take care of their elders. There's a different cultural focus on what's important. And what do we focus on as a culture? Wealth, fame, social media following, podcast listeners, whatever the case may be. We have our priorities in order? And if they were in order, would a lot of these problems dissipate? Would they go away? Would there be as many folks out there suffering mental illness? And sometimes their family removes themselves from their lives for a good reason, sometimes for not. Sometimes they just feel like this person's a burden, loving this person who has this mental deficit. It's a challenge. And they just decide they don't want to help them, and they abandon them. And these are the folks that I see in my business sometimes getting caught up on the wrong side of the law. And is the government there, to fix the problem? Or is the culture so broken and so off course that unless we have a major correction with how we view ourselves and view our relationships with our family members, our friends, our elders, our veterans, that's what's really going to end up fixing the problem. Building a tiny home community of 52 or 360 units, say 200 of them go to Californians, 100 go to some Las Vegans that hear about these advertisements. They transport themselves to our community to take these rentals. And maybe we help out 62 people in the greater Pahrump area. At what expense do we do that for? What's the long-term effect of a tiny home community right there off 160 on the main drag? What's the long-term effect on our community for doing that? Having the heart in the right place doesn't always equate to long-term success. In some of the county commission interactions and meeting video that I was able to watch on Granicus, how it comes up on the site after, or actually while the meetings are going on, you can stream them on Granicus, or you can kind of watch the recording. I think I was watching one of the recordings over parts of it, and there's interactions or commentary from some of the county commissioners on the ARPA funds, the federal funds that can kind of come in to help, that are kind of meant to help communities, help small businesses, help organizations in communities like ours receive funding for projects, post-COVID, to kind of get, is birthed out of that gigantic, multi-trillion-dollar bill that I think is going to just do nothing much more than just kind of devalue the dollar over time. It is going to help some people, but again, like I pointed out before, at what cost? When you have a little bit more money in your pocket, does it really matter if you have 20% more money in your pocket for a certain amount of time, but everything that you want to go purchase is 50% higher? You've actually lost ground. If everything costs 50% more and you only have 20% more, it's a mathematical equation. You've lost your buying power. Money is a tool. If you weaken the tool to where you don't have purchasing power like you would have, what good is it if everybody got an income influx? And what I saw, some of the commissioners, they were kind of, for lack of a better word, I want to say giddy or happy, excited that they've got access to these allocations of money that they need to get out. They need to get the money out and in the hands of people so they can spend the money. It's like a mad dash for this cash. And I don't like that mentality, especially when you have people identify as conservative or conservative Republicans, just scrambling to find areas and avenues to give, money to either businesses or organizations or 501c3s or not-for-profits. Now, full disclosure, this time around, my business, I will say this, I did file for ARPA funding, full disclosure, but CARES Act, all that stuff before, I didn't want any of that help at the time. I figured I was going to dig in, and my business was going to make it or was going to bust, and it was going to be based upon me kicking it into hyperdrive. But I can tell you this with absolute certainty, my business was decimated by COVID policies in our community, ranging from how the courts were ran to different protocols for the sheriff's office, the jail, detention, different things like that, the ICE contract at the jail. All these things kind of conspired to really harm my business. So, for the sake of fairness, this time around, we applied for reimbursements for their grant program through ARPA. But because here's the one thing, policies from the federal level down to the local level were instituted that harmed my business. It wasn't just a component of market forces, just, not like when I worked at the Riviera Hotel during 9/11. And when that happened, tourism obviously just dropped, right? So half the hotel starts laying off workers because people aren't traveling to go on vacation. It was, that event kind of changed the landscape to tourism and the economy just by sheer virtue of the totality of the carnage that it brought forth. It wasn't market forces like that. It was intentional decisions by leadership people, whether it was in our county, in our state, i.e. Governor Sisolak, or the federal government, that really punished businesses like mine. So, yeah, I applied for that through my company. So, just wanted full disclosure there, but it's not like how it is on a wide scale. If this money has to be allocated by a certain point, so our county commissioners are going to kind of jump the gun and rush projects out there and decide to give, hundreds of thousands of dollars to different organizations because, like, if you don't spend it, you lose it type mentality. And it's like, no, I don't buy that. I don't like that mentality. And we're never going to be able to spend ourselves into prosperity, using these government funds as like sort of a slush fund. We're not going to solve our problems by spending more money. We don't solve our problems in our own home life that way, in our own household, with our own personal finances. If life is tough and you're having a problem, knocking out the rent, making sure the kids have clothes for school or whatever it is, gas in the tank, you don't just sit there and spend your way, spend more and more money and expect good results and expect that your needs are met. That's not the way it works. You don't max out your credit cards on Amazon.com when you don't have groceries in your refrigerator, right? So we're going to kind of take a break. There's a couple other issues that I wanted to talk about after the break that particularly affect us here in Pahrump, Southern Nevada. So stick around. Veterans Crisis Line. Dial 988. Veterans Crisis Line. Dial 988. Then press 1. Someone is available who cares. Someone is available who will listen. Someone is available who will help. Veterans Crisis Line. 988.
Election day is around the corner, and you'll soon have a million choices to make at the ballot box. But right now, your number one choice for freedom is a no-brainer. It's Matt Sadler with a Hope Bail Bond. Choose Matt Sadler for your Nevada bail bondsman. Matt Sadler has been your number one local bail agent 3 years running. Nye County. Let's keep Matt Sadler in his office. For the best way out of jail, call 442-BAIL. He's Matt Sadler, and he approves your freedom.
And we're back now to the second portion of the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler. Again, thank you for listening to 97.7 FM, where the First Amendment lives. Make sure you check back at this station, 6 p.m. every night. The hour at 6 p.m. is referred to as Your 2 Cents. My 2 Cents, which is this podcast, is on Tuesdays and Saturdays, where you're going to catch the Nevada Patriot Podcast. Other nights, you'll catch other good shows on this station, so make sure you stay tuned. If you have any questions, comments, concerns with some of the content that you hear on my show, you can always reach out to me by phone, 775-382-2516. You can email me, Matt Sadler for Nevada, all spelled out, Matt Sadler, FORNEVADA, at yahoo.com. Or check me out on the site. The Nevada Patriot Podcast is there on the nevadapatriot.com with lots of other cool content, lists that you can get on, information about upcoming meetings, important items that you can take action on when it comes to state legislators, contact forms, different stuff is on that site as a good, useful resource for you Nevadans out there. So make sure you check the site from time to time. So I wanted to speak about, the show basically is about how big do we want our government to be? How much of a nanny state do we want our nanny state to continue being? I'd prefer it if they weren't our nannies, all the states, the country. I think Americans are governed the best when they're governed the least. Humans make better choices when they make their own choices and not under the compulsion and compelling nature that government can often bring forward. So I think a freer country, a country with more liberty, a state that's more free, a state that has more liberty, has a better citizenry. So that's my point, and I'm sticking to it. So the next topic I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you've noticed this, but our legislators are bypassing the governor to get resolutions in writing and done to change our Nevada Constitution. So I've talked about this at length before when it comes to ranked choice voting or joining the National Popular Vote Compact by basically pledging our electoral college votes for presidential elections, by pledging them to whoever wins the national popular vote in a presidential election. I think that is a terrible idea. It goes against the idea of having a republic, a Republican form of government. We are a representative republic, a constitutional republic, not a democracy. We are governed this way so that mob rule cannot be ruling the day. So our legislators right now, they're bypassing the governor. So what they're doing is they're passing, they call them joint resolutions, so it can originate in the Assembly or the Senate. So they're AJRs and SJRs, so Senate joint resolutions or Assembly joint resolutions, so that in 2 successive election cycles, if both houses, both chambers of our state legislature can have a majority vote to pass these resolutions, they don't need the governor to sign them into law. They don't need the governor, and it doesn't matter, the governor can't veto them. So if they pass 2 successive sessions, which our sessions are about 2 years apart, they can become ripened to have then a ballot measure. You know, those questions that we get on our ballots from year to year, or every couple years, it seems like there's anywhere between 3 and 5 on average. Question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4. Should I vote yes or should I vote no? I'm going to scream it from the rooftop of the Nevada Patriot Podcast. When in doubt, which should be almost every single time you see a question, vote no. Don't change the Constitution. That's what these resolutions do. They go through a couple resolution votes through our legislature. Then they get on your ballot. Then if a majority of you Nevadans vote yes, it's codified into our Constitution and it becomes the supreme law of the land, and there's not a thing that our Republican governor can do to stop it. And the way the numbers are in our state Senate and in our state Assembly, those are the 2 chambers of our state legislature, it is hard to stop them from passing these resolutions. So when you see these ballot initiatives, ballot questions, just know, and I'm talking to you conservatives listening, and I'm sure some of you Democrats or some of you more liberal or leftist type listeners are okay with these things happening. I'm not, and I'm inclined to think that the majority of the listeners and the people who are listening to this podcast, whether it's on Rumble, YouTube, or here locally, you're probably against overreaching government. And every time there's a general election and you see these ballot initiatives, you see that it's a manifestation of an overreach of the state government, of some regulation, and like the pinheads that many of us are in Nevada, we fall for it when it's packaged up all pretty and nice and such a good thing. And, oh, wow, well, that sounds nice. We should go green energy by 2030. 50% of all of our emissions and all of our usage should be green energy sources, without for 1 second really contemplating what does the long-term effect of that have on our price for fossil fuel energy. The energy that might protect you from, dying in your house in the summertime or dying of the freezing cold in the wintertime by not having energy to either cool you off in the summer or heat your home up in the winter. It'd be great if everybody had windmills that didn't slice up birds, and solar panels that weren't mined in the dirtiest ways imaginable for lithium and all these other toxic building blocks that it takes to build the batteries, the panels. We get them shipped in from different countries because most oftentimes producers here in our own country, due to our own safety standards and health standards and environmental standards, can't even produce these items, these components, these building blocks of these items, of these panels, of these batteries, without breaking some law. So we import it from slave labor loving countries elsewhere, and then we import it here. So we dirty up the environment even more to be clean. And then everybody has to pay a lot of money extra for their power bill every month, but they get to feel good about themselves because they feel like, wow, if AOC saw me, she'd be really pleased. Yeah, I could go to her clubhouse now. We're really environmentally savvy, aren't we cool? Meanwhile, we're complaining about $300 a month power bills now. What's it going to be after 2030? $700, $800, $1,000 to keep yourself from dying in the summertime? What about folks that need medical equipment hooked up to the power grid at all times? What happens when the power grid starts failing and you don't have electricity to keep your medical equipment on to stay alive? These are real problems that are happening as a consequence of voting yes on ballot questions like we had a few years back. So there's two different ways that these ballot questions get in there and change our Constitution. They can come about through citizens going out, collecting a bunch of signatures, getting a question on the ballot, just the citizens themselves, and having it pass in 2 consecutive general elections. And then it becomes a constitutional amendment here in Nevada. The other way is like what we talked about before. We have the chambers of our legislature pass these joint resolutions in 2 successive legislative sessions. Then no one has to go out there and get a gazillion signatures. It goes right on a ballot. And they just hope that we sheeple, we lemmings will go ahead and say, oh, that sounds great. Yes, I'll vote yes on that. That sounds fantastic. Ranked choice voting. Yes, that is a fair way to do it. Open primaries. Not realizing that we're going to fundamentally change how our state is even governed, how our local elections occur. We're going to change all these things. And it's going to be based upon ballot questions. So that's going to be a major point that we're going to be talking about in our grassroots conservatives meetings that we have here in Pahrump every 4th Monday. The next one's coming up on the 22nd of May, Monday, 6 p.m. at the Bellbon's office on 41 North Highway 160. We're going to meet, and this is going to be on the agenda, so we're going to have a chance to talk about it. It's not only about the Grassroots Conservatives of Nevada, or it's known as GCON, has other items. We're going to be talking about VEA issues. I know it's a hot button topic. That's going to be on the agenda. Our electric bills. Promises made and promises not kept by Valley Electric, among other things. Maybe examining some of the expenditures, some of the salaries that people probably don't know about, or it's not completely transparent to the average person without doing some digging. Another issue we have in our town that we're going to talk about at this next meeting is going to be, we always wonder where all the water is going that's cleaning off and helping to establish the solar farm out there in Clark County near Tacopa, the turnoff on the Clark County side. Water evidently is coming directly from our basin 162 here, the one that we depend on here in Pahrump for our drinking water, for our clean water, for our potable water. It's coming right out of our basin and helping to keep these private solar farms that ship our power all the way to California. It's to help them out. So that'll be another issue. Primarily, we're not an organization that just We're not a bunch of political activists, although there are some active people that are part of this group. What this group does is it's trying to put teeth into the electoral process to help candidates who are conservative to win elections. And not just the candidates that go around and are professional A-grade master fundraisers. Because it seems like the powers that be, and you can imagine who I'm talking about, whether it's at the state level or you're talking about corporate level or gaming or whatever, the power brokers. Have you noticed that they tend to kind of back the same type of Republican candidates in the primaries, as in the Republican candidates that probably don't have a huge grassroots following that just end up losing a lot of times in the general election? Do you ever wonder why that cycle continues on and on and on? And wouldn't it be nice if we could kind of break that cycle and figure out a way to kind of get in the game and get involved at the foundational level of that, to kind of change it, to level the playing field? I mean, these are things that we're trying to put together to talk about at our meetings. So, and one of the key points that we got to do to get the people that come to meetings like this, and you listeners out there who are active, to get to talk to your neighbors about these important issues. Talk to the people in the community, because many people, there's a lot of good people, they just don't know what you know. They don't know. A lot of them are just trying to knock out that next car payment, stay in their rental, not lose their house, make sure their kids are fed. They don't have time to look too far ahead because they're living a hard life now trying to make ends meet. So that doesn't mean that you can't carve out time and make connections with these people. I know I try to. And that's really the way it's going to change. I look at group meetings that we put together, whether it's the Republican meetings that happen every month that I'm a part of, or this conservative group, or really anything I get involved with. I don't look at it as like everybody at that meeting is almost like a carrier pigeon, right? So they're getting this information, but the job is to go out there and go fly away and go get that information to someone else, like carry that vital information to other people, so that we can kind of be that like different conduits, different veins that can kind of go in and tap into different areas and branch out, just like a tree, kind of like, right? And tree branches is kind of like start compacted, a couple of them, and then bam, before you know it, there could be, hundreds of branches going in all directions. That's what we need in order to have real substantive change. So we're not looking to, I don't look now any longer just to go to the meetings, gather information, take it home, marinate on it, know it, commit it to memory, and then just go to sleep and not do anything with it. The idea is to spread it. If you know something's true, don't buy into the lie that, it's not polite to talk about politics and religion and family events. That's a lie, from the pit of where. I believe there's nothing more important to talk about. Weather's cool. Sports are cool. I'm a Golden Knights fan. I like hockey. But, let's make sure we focus the majority of our dealings with people, especially the important relations in our lives. Talk about the stuff that matters. Talk about stuff like this. Because I'm telling you, the people that are living, week to week, month to month, if they don't get in the game, the faith-based community even get in the game. A lot of folks I go to church with, and they're not real active politically because they're, in their mind, they're looking at two different realms. They rely on their faith in God, and God's going to take care of things, and He does. And sad to say, but with that comes a responsibility of trying to make our community better. God wants us to be vessels that, work for the good and not for bad and not for being, indifferent. He wants us to get out there. Now, He doesn't want us to be idolatrous and devote our lives at the expense of our families to causes. He wants balance, right? So it's important to focus on the balance. You got to take care of your wives, your spouse, your children. You got to have that relationship with God. But then you got to have, once those relationships are all in order and all balanced, God will open up opportunities in your neighborhoods. and your workplace, these chances that you probably didn't really realize were there will start to open up for you. And, spread the good news. And just, a great conversation starter would be, if you can just ever talk to someone and say, you know what, I've noticed, Bob or Margaret or whoever you're talking to, why do we Perumpians and Nevadans just keep voting yes on all these ballot questions? There you go. That'll start a conversation maybe as you're, picking out veggies at Smith's or whatever you're doing. You never know. You never know. That can spawn bigger talks and important things. I think we need to kind of reverse our thinking. I think in this social media era, in this entertainment era that we live in, everything's sound bites, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds here. I think sometimes they just want to dumb us down. And by they, I just mean, the mega corporate American media just wants us to be just consumers. They're after our data. They want to know, what we're talking about, so then Facebook gives you an ad suggestion like, goodness, honey, wasn't I just talking about, a cruise to Bermuda? And here it is. I get a Facebook sponsored ad on, Carnival Cruise Lines or whatever pops up on your phone. That's how the media world, the sports world, the entertainment world, the technology world, that's how they look at us. We're a means to an end. We're just, I hate to say it, but, if we don't fight for our own humanity, and we just leave it to progress, and we leave it to the media, and we leave it to the culture, and we leave it to the people like LeBron James, the mouthpieces of the world, we're all going to be steered right off of a cliff. And I'll take very little satisfaction in being able to see it before everyone else. I know there's people out there that like to, when the conspiracy theories actually come true, I remember what I told you. For me, it's like I don't want some of the stuff that I fear to come true. I want to be wrong. I wish I was just a conspiracy wingnut, but sadly, I don't think so. I'm pretty adept at noticing patterns and kind of reading the room, so to speak, when it comes to our state of affairs here. And that doesn't mean that we're doomed and we're destined for failure, because believe it or not, 10, 20 different really informed citizens who want to be involved and make a difference can almost do the workload of thousands of people. I'm not even joking. I mean, really, if you really think about how you spend your time and if you can spend it on something worthwhile and a good cause, and your cause is truth, I think, your efforts will be blessed and multiplied. So I'm not going to hog up you listeners too much longer. Again, I really appreciate you standing by and hanging out for the entirety of the show today and listening to my 2 cents here at the Nevada Patriot Podcast. Just know, again, visit the site, get connected, follow me on Facebook. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And until next time, Patriots, God bless you.
You've just spent some of the best minutes of your life hanging out with Matt Sadler at the Nevada Patriot Podcast. Thank you for listening. Tell a friend and join us next time. After you catch your breath, check out the NevadaPatriot.com for more content, advertising opportunities, and to give listener feedback. That website again is the NevadaPatriot.com. Until next time, Patriots, stay American.